I was kidnapped along with Sarah Stone on the way to our pre-wedding trip. The kidnappers forced me to reveal Sarah Stone's whereabouts, but I kept silent to protect her, enduring abuse for 100 hours. It was only after Sarah Stone mobilized all her family's resources that they found me, broken and battered. She went wild with rage, swearing to send the kidnappers to prison. The kidnappers cried and knelt, begging for mercy. "Miss Stone, Mr. David Miller made us do it. Are you going to send him to prison too?" I looked at Sarah Stone's hesitant expression, and the wounds on my body throbbed with searing pain. David Miller was Sarah Stone's idealized first love / the one that got away who had disappeared 5 years ago. In that moment, I knew Sarah Stone and I were truly over. After waking up in the hospital, I canceled the wedding ceremony. "Hello, I'd like to cancel the wedding ceremony." I gave the staff member on the other end my identification and the scheduled date. Silence on the other end, then a hesitant voice. "Mr. Peterson, Miss Stone specifically asked someone to book your wedding date. She said she wanted to get married on the anniversary of the day you met. If you cancel, you might have to wait another year." My chest tightened sharply, and a suffocating dull pain blurred my vision. Cancel it. Seeing how determined I was, the person on the other end could only agree to the cancellation. While confirming the information on the phone, I scanned every corner of the hospital room. The empty room was devoid of warmth, and my heart sank little by little. "Rob, you're awake?" The sudden intrusion made me turn my head instinctively, and I saw Sarah Stone. After more than 10 days apart, she was still radiant, her delicate face beaming with happiness. I looked at my reflection in the window, my face swollen and bruised, some wounds still oozing with pus. I barely looked human anymore. "Why? Are you on the phone as soon as you wake up? The doctor said you were seriously injured and need plenty of rest." Sarah Stone acted as if nothing had happened, skillfully helping me lie down and tucking in the blanket. In her beautiful, almond-shaped eyes, I could see concern and affection for me. "The doctor said your condition isn't serious, you'll be fine with rest. As for your legs, the doctor said surgery is best scheduled for 6 months later, after your physical condition improves slightly." "Sarah Stone, did you visit me while I was in a coma?" I interrupted her chatter coldly. Sarah Stone's hand, which was peeling an apple, suddenly stopped. Her eyes shifted away from me, and she stammered, "Of course I did." I knew Sarah Stone too well. She was lying. How could she have visited this empty, cold room? I remembered last year when I was hospitalized with stomach pain. Sarah Stone was so anxious she almost tore the hospital apart. She hunted for famous doctors, barged into the operating room, causing chaos throughout the hospital. Even after learning it was just simple gastroenteritis, she stayed by my side, never leaving, filling the room with all sorts of nutritional supplements and necessities. She even had fresh flowers delivered every day, saying it was to keep the patient in good spirits. If I wasn't mistaken, it had been half a month since that incident happened to me. She hadn't come to see me even once. All that deep love I once felt seemed to completely vanish the moment she heard David Miller's name. But I was tortured for her, every inch of my body damaged, my legs even broken. What was all that suffering compared to her feelings? Recalling Sarah Stone's hesitation when she heard David Miller's name, and the difficult look she gave me, I couldn't breathe. "Please leave." I heard my own choked voice and turned away with difficulty, unable to look at Sarah Stone any longer. Sarah Stone nicked a little, rushing to explain. "Rob, don't misunderstand. I didn't mean not to visit you. I just couldn't get away. David Miller, he had his reasons for leaving me back then. He hasn't been doing well since he left, and he's developed severe depression. He needs me." If that incident hadn't happened, perhaps I would have believed Sarah Stone and felt sympathy for David Miller. But now, I couldn't believe her. I stayed silent, letting the tears stream down my face. The tears soaked into my wounds, causing sharp, stinging pain. "Rob, don't worry, I will marry you. Regarding your kidnapping case, could you write a letter of understanding for David Miller?" Hearing this, I finally couldn't suppress the rage in my heart and sat up straight. "Sarah Stone, you promised you would send the people who hurt me to prison and ensure they received the punishment they deserved. But why is David Miller the only exception? Does the world stop whenever it involves him? Sarah Stone, open your eyes and look. Who did I become this way for?" I screamed hysterically. But Sarah Stone's eyes on me grew colder and colder, until finally, she spoke with near-cold accusation. "Robert Peterson, what has become of you? Where has all your past kindness and consideration gone? Was it all just an act to trick me into marrying you? If that's the case, then I need to seriously reconsider the wedding ceremony." Listening to her ridiculous and absurd accusations, Bitterness and helplessness climbed into my heart layer by layer. Just as I was about to retort, Sarah Stone pulled out her phone, and the coldness in her eyes immediately dissipated. "You need to reflect on yourself." She looked at her phone without lifting her head, dropped this line, and left. Watching her retreating back, my heart sank to the bottom. The last flicker of hope was extinguished. So this was the woman I had loved with all my heart for 3 years. So this is what it means when a person doesn't love you anymore. They don't see your wounds, they don't hear your words. Sarah Stone, don't worry, we will never get married in this lifetime. After that day, I didn't see Sarah Stone again. She was as if she had disappeared, until I found traces of her on David Miller's social media profile. Reliving old dreams with my first love. Accompanied by photos of places they visited, a collage of old and new scenes. In every photo, Sarah Stone's presence could be seen. Half a face showing, a back view, the palm of her right hand with a mole on the index finger. Every photo was like a needle piercing my eyes and heart, bringing indelible pain. In the end, I couldn't help it and sent a screenshot of the post to Sarah Stone. A moment later, Sarah Stone replied, "Robert Peterson, the doctor said spending time with David Miller helps his depression recover. Once he's better, I promise I'll come back and be with you, okay?" Those familiar words, how could they be pieced together to sound so obscure and difficult to understand? I curled up in the covers, letting the pain gnaw at my nerves. Memories of Sarah Stone kept flashing in my mind, the layered pain giving me a sense of masochistic pleasure. I was trying to use this method to make myself remember the lesson. That day, I passed by the resident doctor's office and heard my name. "Robert Peterson's legs can't be delayed any longer. If they are, he'll never walk again. Are you really going to push him to this point just for David Miller?" A sigh came from the other end of the phone. "My priority right now is helping David Miller with his illness. Robert Peterson is stubborn. If his legs heal, he'll definitely leave me. Mark, could you please help me just this once? I promise I'll help him get his legs treated after this." This hospital belonged to Sarah Stone's family. I had never doubted she would interfere with my surgery. Behind the thin door, a heated argument was taking place. I panicked, wanting to escape, but I accidentally fell out of my wheelchair. The door clicked open. Emily Stone stood there, her phone still lit up. A flicker of pity crossed the face that resembled Sarah Stone's. She knelt down and helped me back into the wheelchair. "Let me do the surgery for you, okay?" At first, I thought Emily Stone was lying, but after my leg surgery went smoothly, I knew Emily Stone was a good person. Coincidentally, the day after the surgery, Sarah Stone appeared. She didn't seem to know I'd had surgery. I was rubbing my leg, and Sarah Stone instinctively reached for it. "Does your leg hurt again?" I felt a little spaced out. I hadn't seen Sarah Stone's gentle and caring side since that incident. I pushed her hand away and pulled the blanket over my legs. "Is there something you need?" Perhaps my coldness and distance hurt Sarah Stone's eyes. "Robert Peterson, I was wrong. Please don't be angry anymore, okay? I'm here to take you home. These past few days, I've had people install accessibility features/accessible modifications for you at home. You'll be able to live just as conveniently as before." Sarah Stone stood by my hospital bed and pulled the wheelchair from the corner. Without allowing me to resist, she had the nurse lift me and place me in the wheelchair. As she pushed me, she told me about everything she had prepared for me at her home. I felt like laughing. If I hadn't seen David Miller's social media posts, I might actually have believed her words and even been moved by them. I didn't resist because I did need some time to recover, and the Stone residence was the best place for that. I just didn't expect to see someone else at the Stone residence. When I got home, I saw David Miller waiting at the door. I had never met David Miller, only heard his name from Sarah Stone's mother. Mrs. Stone said David Miller and I were nothing alike. I was cheerful and outgoing, while he was quiet and refined. But she didn't like David Miller because he had only gotten close to Sarah Stone to get the overseas study opportunity at the time. Sarah Stone didn't know this. I hadn't mentioned it either. I didn't want to get involved in their relationship. But I didn't expect the first thing David Miller did upon his return was to hurt me and even deceive Sarah Stone again. And Sarah Stone was being played like a fool. "Robert Peterson, thank you for forgiving me for that incident. What I did was wrong, but I really didn't tell them to torture you. I just wanted to see you, to talk to you. They acted on their own." David Miller, with an innocent face, leaned closer and kept explaining. But I didn't hear a single word he said. "When did I forgive you?" I remembered the letter of understanding Sarah Stone had mentioned earlier and turned to look at her. So that was it. She had forged my letter of understanding. Sarah Stone guiltily stepped between David Miller and me and pushed me into the room. David Miller meekly followed behind Sarah Stone. In my peripheral vision, I saw their hands tightly clasped together. It wasn't until I got home that I realized Sarah Stone's so-called accessible environment for disabled people was just making me stay in the storage room in the corner on the first floor. Looking at the dark, cramped environment, I felt like crying and laughing at the same time. The doctor said a bright and warm room is good for my recovery, so Sarah gave me your room. You don't mind, do you? David Miller put his arm around Sarah Stone's waist, a smirk hidden in his smile, a challenge in his eyes. Sarah Stone didn't say anything, her gaze flickering. I don't mind. This isn't my home, it's not up to me. Sarah Stone's face changed slightly when she heard that. Seemingly a little angry, and she turned and left. In the following days, the three of us lived together in harmony. Every time Sarah Stone came to see me, David Miller would call her away with various excuses. It was either a stomachache or an eye ache, dizziness or heart palpitations. And these tricks were extremely effective on Sarah Stone. Even Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, couldn't stand it, complaining about David Miller to me every day, occasionally adding a few private comments. Miss Stone is just momentarily confused. She'll come to her senses eventually. We just have to endure for a while, and things will calm down. Mrs. Gable was relaying messages from Sarah Stone's mother, but my heart remained untouched. Mrs. Stone was on a business trip abroad and couldn't return recently. Afraid of Sarah Stone being charmed by David Miller, she could only work on me. But what they didn't know was that I would never marry Sarah Stone again. All I wanted was to heal my legs here. The next morning, I woke up to see the whole house bustling. The courtyard was being decorated and set up. When I asked, I found out Sarah Stone was throwing a birthday party for David Miller. David Miller stood in the courtyard wearing a custom suit, tall and straight, his handsome face showing no trace of age. "Rob, you're awake." David Miller smiled and walked over, making a move to push my wheelchair. I glanced sideways and immediately saw the wedding shoes on his feet. These were my wedding shoes, custom made by a craftsman when Sarah Stone and I went to Italy together. "Where did you get those shoes?" I gripped his hand tightly, my voice laced with anger. "Rob, what are you doing?" David Miller barely said a few words before his eyes turned red, looking like a startled rabbit. "Robert Peterson." Sarah Stone appeared out of nowhere, rushing towards me and standing in front of me. David Miller pulled free and hid behind Sarah Stone. "Rob was just asking about the shoes, he didn't touch me." "Sarah, don't be angry. These shoes were in the cabinet in the room. I thought you bought them for me, so I put them on." Sarah Stone became even more furious. David Miller's affected behavior was like a thorn in my side. "It's just a pair of shoes, and it's worth you getting physical? Robert Peterson, don't go too far." Sarah Stone looked down at me, as if looking at a stray dog on the street, her eyes filled with defensiveness and anger. "Sarah Stone, don't you want to open your damn eyes and see that those are my wedding shoes?" She turned to look at David Miller and finally realized they were indeed my wedding shoes. "There are plenty of wedding shoes. If you want some, I'll buy you more. David Miller just liked them. What's the harm in wearing them once? He'll give them back when he's done. Besides, your legs are broken now, what do you need wedding shoes for? Apologize to David Miller, and we'll let this go." I looked up in disbelief. I understood every word, but strung together, it was utterly incomprehensible. Everyone knew who these legs were broken for, but now she was standing here saying my broken legs didn't deserve wedding shoes? Why should I apologize? It's David Miller's birthday today. The birthday boy is the most important. Don't you even understand that? Sarah Stone glared at me angrily, her voice loud. I had only heard about the power of an idealized first love before, but I never expected Sarah Stone, usually decisive, smart, and shrewd, to be completely fooled by such clumsy tactics. I couldn't be bothered with her, so I pushed my wheelchair and turned back to my room. Behind me, I heard David Miller crying and Sarah Stone comforting him. "Don't worry, I'll teach her a lesson." I locked the door in the small room and started trying to walk. I had been secretly doing a lot of rehabilitation exercises these past few days, and my condition was gradually improving. Mrs. Gable was worried I was too sad and kept calling me from outside the door, urging me to come out and join the fun. Unable to bear the old lady's worry, I opened the door and let her push me out. The decorations in the courtyard were exquisite, looking even better than the scene of my engagement and proposal to Sarah Stone. Sarah Stone and David Miller were high school classmates, and she had invited almost all their mutual friends to attend. They stood on stage, sharing stories from the past, holding hands and playfully teasing each other, incredibly intimate. In the lively scene, I seemed to be the only outsider. Everyone knew I was Sarah Stone's fiancé, but they all tacitly ignored me. They were really well matched back then. It was strange how they broke up. I felt sorry for them for a long time. Yeah, it looks like they're back together now. How could they be? Sarah Stone's fiancé is right there. Amidst the whispers, several unfriendly glances landed on me. That probing and disdain made me feel a little uneasy. I patted Mrs. Gable's hand and asked her to push me away. But just as we turned to leave, the projection screen in the courtyard lit up. Noisy, chaotic sounds and images unfolded on the screen. I turned back in horror, watching the scenes, my body trembling involuntarily. The entire crowd erupted, everyone turning to look. Even Mrs. Gable was stunned, frozen in place. David Miller stood there, smiling triumphantly, his eyes seeming to say I had lost. Sarah Stone frantically turned off the projector and strode towards me. Is this the lesson you wanted to teach me? Sarah Stone's steps faltered, a hint of weariness on her beautiful face, but she didn't deny it. I pushed my wheelchair away in disappointment, and Mrs. Gable, having snapped out of her daze, called my name and followed me. How disgusting. Sarah Stone is still willing to marry him? I ignored those words, pretending not to hear them. But when I returned to my room, I locked myself in. A sense of unprecedented humiliation left me numb. Late at night, I closed my eyes to rest, but I smelled Sarah Stone's scent. She held me from behind, soothing me patiently. I'm sorry, Rob. I know you resent me, but I really couldn't help it. I feel guilty towards David Miller, and towards you too. I don't know what to do. Tomorrow is our wedding ceremony date. Shall we go together tomorrow morning, okay? I heard myself reply with a simple okay. Perhaps it was time to leave. The next morning, Sarah Stone took me to City Hall. But near the entrance, she was held up by a phone call. The person on the other end was hysterical, and Sarah Stone patiently tried to calm them down. I stood up from the wheelchair, turned around, and hailed a taxi. As the car sped away, I looked at Sarah Stone's tightly furrowed brows and softly said goodbye. Sarah Stone was getting tired of coaxing him and thought of me, who usually didn't need to be placated. She turned around and saw the empty wheelchair. She grabbed a passerby at random, asking numbly and anxiously, "The person in that wheelchair, have you seen him?" She asked several passersby in a row, all of whom shook their heads fearfully and walked away. Sarah Stone was in complete panic. She thought I had been kidnapped again and called David Miller. The call didn't connect. Sarah Stone then started searching for me like crazy. My phone flooded with calls and messages. I already canceled the wedding ceremony. Let's break up. Sarah Stone stared at the texts on her phone, trembling with fright. The unprecedented fear made it hard for her to stand. Even when she broke up with Lingua in the past, she hadn't been this panicked. She kept calling back, but the line was always busy, until finally, it went to voicemail. Sarah Stone was completely frantic. She stared blankly at the empty wheelchair, unable to comprehend how someone who could only sit in a wheelchair yesterday could suddenly stand up. She ran her hands through her hair in frustration, her thoughts a mess. Her phone kept ringing in her pocket. The calls she usually answered immediately now felt like death knells. They irritated her, even bringing a touch of hatred. If it hadn't been for David Miller, that incident wouldn't have happened to me, and I wouldn't have left. Sarah Stone loosened her collar in annoyance, sat down on the ground, and answered the call. "Sarah, don't you want me anymore? Please don't get married to him, okay? If you dare to marry him, I'll jump from upstairs today." David Miller was crying and whining on the phone. Sarah Stone's brows were tightly furrowed, but she didn't say a word in response. During these past days, David Miller had been throwing tantrums, threatening suicide, and Sarah Stone had been coaxing and indulging him like a dog. At first, she felt a sense of joy at having him back, naturally willing to do anything for David Miller. But as time went on, David Miller's demands became more and more difficult, and she was already struggling to keep up. Now, her greatest fear had finally come true. I had truly left her. Only then did she realize how ridiculous and excessive her actions had been recently. "David Miller, haven't you made enough of a scene? If you want to die, just go ahead and die." After saying that, she hung up and turned off her phone. On the other end, David Miller was smashing and breaking things in the house like a madman. Mrs. Gable tried to stop him but was shoved to the ground, hitting her head. "It's all that man's fault for stealing Sarah." David Miller rushed into the small storage room and pulled out a box with his bare hands. Inside were photos together of Sarah Stone and me, and some gifts with sentimental value. I hadn't taken them with me when I left. David Miller dumped everything on the floor, smashing whatever could be smashed and tearing apart what couldn't. Finally, he took out a lighter and tried to set everything on fire. Sarah Stone returned, exhausted, and saw this scene. David Miller. Sarah Stone took a few quick steps and snatched the lighter from his hand. "What are you doing?" Sarah Stone looked at the pile of debris on the floor and immediately saw the torn photos together. Every single one of my faces was now shattered pieces that couldn't be put back together. Sarah Stone's emotions instantly collapsed, her eyes bloodshot, and she grabbed David Miller by the throat. The rage in her eyes was enough to burn through David Miller, and his delicate face instantly turned bright red. He thrashed, hitting Sarah Stone's hand, his voice brokenly calling out her name. "Mr. Peterson, please come back." I watched the video Mrs. Gable sent me, somewhat unable to believe Sarah Stone would do that to David Miller. "Mrs. Gable, I won't be coming back. Anything to do with the Stone residence no longer concerns me." After saying that, I hung up the phone. Who knew if this was just Sarah Stone putting on a show for me? Sarah Stone was greedy. Even if she knew she couldn't have her cake and eat it too, she would still try every despicable means to get both. So, Sarah Stone, in order to be with David Miller, wanted to use my broken legs to imprison me. Thinking of this, my heart felt empty, with cold wind whistling through it. Although the pain was gone, there was an empty, uncomfortable feeling. Mourning a lost love? A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned around and saw Emily Stone, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. "Wipe your tears." Emily Stone handed me some tissues. Only then did I realize I was crying uncontrollably. I wiped my face roughly, sniffled, "Thank you. How did you find me?" Emily Stone stood quietly behind me, her cool voice speaking again. "You didn't come back for your checkup. I was afraid your legs wouldn't recover and I'd be held responsible later." A light-hearted joke instantly made me laugh. Emily Stone and Sarah Stone were very similar, but their personalities and temperaments were different. Emily Stone, as the older sister, was the most rebellious, while Sarah Stone seemed gentle and steady, which is why Sarah Stone inherited the family business. And I had actually known Emily Stone first, and she was the one I loved. But back then, Emily Stone was free-spirited. She couldn't accept the constraints of love and went to America. And at that time, Sarah Stone had been abandoned by David Miller. Our two wounded hearts embraced each other for warmth in that moment. Those moments of understanding each other's pain made our relationship progress smoothly. Sarah Stone gave me all her love, all her tenderness. In the long passage of time, I gradually forgot Emily Stone. People are always prone to getting lost in their own fantasies, believing that to be love. At the peak of my love for Sarah Stone, David Miller delivered the most fatal blow. And Sarah Stone, in turn, personally killed my love. I won't hold anyone from the Stone family responsible. The sudden coldness in my tone made Emily Stone a little nervous. She dropped her nonchalant attitude and stood up straight, explaining, "That's not what I meant. I know. Let's go. I'll go to the hospital for the checkup with you." I interrupted Emily Stone and turned to get into her car first. When I got to the hospital, I realized Emily Stone had already arranged everything, making my checkup simple and quick. The checkup results were good, and Emily Stone finally relaxed. She asked me where I would go after leaving, but I shook my head and didn't say anything, turning to leave. Perhaps having been through too much, I couldn't trust anyone anymore. I returned to my small two-bedroom apartment before I moved into the Stone residence and started looking for lawyers for my previous case. The high legal fees made me hesitate. So I listed the apartment for sale online, but for several days, I received no inquiries. Until that day, the agent informed me that someone had paid the full amount up front and demanded an immediate transfer of ownership. Although I had doubts, knowing it was a full payment, I wouldn't suffer any loss. So I took the property deed/title and rushed to the agent's office. When I arrived, I found out that the person who had bought my apartment was Emily Stone. Emily Stone sat on the sofa, legs crossed, looking relaxed and elegant. She waved and said hi. I frowned and sat down across from her. "You bought my apartment?" Emily Stone raised an eyebrow and nodded, pushing a coffee towards me. "I ordered your favorite cappuccino." I looked at the coffee in front of me, shook my head, and pushed it back. "Emily Stone, I haven't liked cappuccino for a long time. Let's go. I'll go through the transfer of ownership with you." Emily Stone sat there, slow to react, only asking blankly why I didn't like cappuccino anymore. I ignored her and took Emily Stone to complete the property transfer. The process was simple, and Emily Stone's payment was quick. I successfully received a large sum of money. Just as I was happy about this, Emily Stone gave me some news. Sarah Stone and David Miller are getting married. My throat tightened, and I couldn't speak for a while. After a long pause, I finally replied, "That's good." It was good. A broken mirror reunited. Robert Peterson, don't you hate them? Don't you want David Miller to face the punishment he deserves? Emily Stone's few words pulled out the memories hit a end deep in my heart. The pain was like a brand, throbbing occasionally. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it was useless. I know you're looking for a lawyer. I have the money, and I have the people. Let me make it up to you properly for what happened 3 years ago, okay? I turned to look at Emily Stone and nodded. Perhaps this was my shortcut in life. At the Stone residence family dinner/gathering, I saw Sarah Stone again. The difference was, this time I was Emily Stone's girlfriend. "Allow me to introduce everyone, this is my girlfriend, Robert Peterson." Emily Stone introduced me again to everyone with composure. Everyone froze, taking a sharp breath. Sarah Stone's face turned ashen, her fists clenched as if she wanted to tear everyone apart. "She's the girlfriend I was planning to bring home 3 years ago." At these words, Mrs. Stone and Sarah Stone were stunned. 3 years ago, Emily Stone said she was bringing her girlfriend home, and everyone was prepared that day. But as dinner approached, Emily Stone said they had broken up. Then the next day, she rushed to America and rarely returned home after that. No one expected that Emily Stone's girlfriend back then was me. Sarah Stone was so angry she looked like she could grind her back teeth into dust, staring fixedly at me from across the table. David Miller sat beside Sarah Stone, a white lace ribbon around his neck cleverly concealing the marks where he'd been choked. During this meal, everyone had their own thoughts. At the table, no one dared to say much. Mrs. Stone had contacted me after returning to the country, but I never agreed to meet her, nor did I agree to her request for me to return to Sarah Stone's side. She offered me a large sum in compensation and apologized for not being able to return in time to handle that incident. I refused, and I didn't blame her. It was just that the former closeness could never return. RN. Halfway through the meal, Mrs. Gable walked in with an envelope and handed it to David Miller. David Miller opened it with a puzzled look, and instantly his face turned pale as he stood up. He pointed at me with a face full of rage. You actually sued me?" David Miller said this as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if I shouldn't have sued him, as if he were the victim. I laughed under my breath. As I stood up, the chair legs scraped against the floor with an unpleasant sound. "Why shouldn't I sue you? David Miller, this time, I'm going to sue you until you rot in prison." Sarah Stone looked at me, a flicker of unnatural joy in her eyes. David Miller instinctively wanted to turn to Sarah Stone for help, but Sarah Stone didn't give him a single glance. David Miller was furious and started throwing a tantrum. The family dinner/gathering ended in disarray. After the meal, Emily Stone was called away by Mrs. Stone. She asked me to wait for her in the car. I sat in the car and caught sight of Sarah Stone in my peripheral vision. She bent down and tapped on the window. "Can we talk, please?" I rolled down the window and looked at her with a cold, arrogant expression. "Miss Stone, is there something you need?" Perhaps my deliberately unfamiliar attitude frustrated Sarah Stone a little. Her eyes reddened, and she stood before me with a hint of grievance. "Robert Peterson, David Miller, and I are getting married." Seeing my lack of reaction, Sarah Stone became even more disheartened. "Robert Peterson, so all these years you've been using me as a substitute for my sister?" This was the first time I had seen Sarah Stone look so humble. I didn't know if she was upset about being treated as a substitute or about me no longer treating her the way I used to. She looked like a small dog that had been abandoned. I felt a strange sense of twisted satisfaction, raising an eyebrow at her. "What?" Unwilling to accept it. My relationship with Emily Stone wasn't something I deliberately hid. It was just that no one had ever asked, from beginning to end. I knew everything about Sarah Stone, but she had no curiosity about my past. At first, I thought she didn't want to reopen my wounds, but later I realized she simply wasn't interested. "Sarah Stone, aren't we all someone's substitute at some point? All these years, haven't you been treating me as a substitute for David Miller? Just a tool for solace when feeling down?" Only I treated it as love. For her, it was just a game. I didn't. Every day since you left, I've been reflecting on myself. I know I was incredibly wrong. Robert Peterson, please give me another chance, okay? Looking at the painful expression on Sarah Stone's face, I felt like laughing. People are always like this. They only realize what they had when they've completely lost it. but she forgot that no one in the world waits around for her to turn back. The moment she hurt me for David Miller, there was no turning back for us. Sarah Stone, when you were with me, you were thinking about David Miller every day. And now that David Miller is by your side, you're starting to remember how good I was. Sarah Stone, your love is truly cheap, a cheapness I wouldn't even bother with. Sarah Stone stood there, unsure how to react. It wasn't until David Miller spoke from behind her that she reacted slightly. Sarah, do you really not want me anymore? David Miller stepped forward with a look of grievance, hugging Sarah Stone tightly. Sarah, I really can't live without you. In that lawsuit, will you help me, please? No matter how much David Miller begged, Sarah Stone remained indifferent. The two of them put on a melodramatic scene/soap opera scene in front of me, which I found incredibly boring. I muttered to myself, wondering why Emily Sto. Annie wasn't coming out yet. After rolling my eyes countless times, Emily Stone walked over. Excuse me, pardon my interruption. Couldn't you find a better place to put on a show? Emily Stone had a sharp tongue. A sudden remark made the two people in front of her pause. Sarah Stone was a little embarrassed and pushed David Miller away. Looking at Emily Stone, she hesitated for a long time before asking about the lawsuit. Regarding the lawsuit, I've hired Mr. Harris. You can consult with him if you have questions. But he also said you are bound to lose this case. After all, David Miller projected it at his own birthday party, didn't he? So, you see, you need to find smart men. Your taste is really not good. Emily Stone finished speaking, and without waiting for their reaction, she drove away with me. Looking in the rearview mirror, I laughed out loud at the sight of David Miller stomping his feet in anger. That happy? You'll have more to be happy about soon. At the time, I didn't understand what Emily Stone meant, until the day the verdict was announced. Only then did I realize Emily Stone had sued Sarah Stone as well. The charge was forging a letter of understanding, making her an accomplice. Sarah Stone, due to being involved in the lawsuit, was removed from her position in the company. I had thought the Stone family would protect Sarah Stone, but I found they made no moves. Just like that, Sarah Stone was sentenced to 1 year, while David Miller was sentenced to 15 years. I was sitting at the airport, preparing to leave, when Mrs. Stone found me. Emily Stone, for you, is willing to return to work at Stone Industries. Robert Peterson, perhaps you should seriously consider her. Mrs. Stone told me that Emily Stone was willing to return to Stone Industries to ensure Sarah Stone received the punishment she deserved. Besides this, she also brought me another piece of news. Bah. Then, Emily's departure was because she had lung cancer. I looked up in surprise, spilling my coffee. When she left me back then, it wasn't that I hadn't considered the possibility of a terminal illness. But a joke is just a joke. I never thought that was the real reason. The luggage in my hands suddenly felt hot, and even the plane ticket felt like 1,000 pounds. Just before boarding, I finally turned and left the airport. I took out my phone to call Emily Stone, but the line was constantly busy. As I walked out of the airport, I saw Emily Stone standing across the road. She was wearing a white shirt, her eyes curved as she smiled at me. Robert Peterson. Her clear voice carried through the air into my ears. In that moment, I felt as if I had returned to 3 years ago. Nothing had happened back then, and Emily Stone and I were still pure love. Tears fell without warning. I ran crying into her arms. Emily Stone. Shall we start over? I knew we couldn't pretend nothing had happened, but I believed our love could overcome everything. The 3 years we had missed, we would make up for with the rest of our lives. Later, I learned that Emily Stone had returned countless times, wanting to find me. But she found I was already with Sarah Stone, and she was afraid of disrupting the calm life I had built. It wasn't until I was injured that she finally decided to come back to me. So, the person who saved me back then was someone you found? Only then did I remember what Sarah Stone meant by "help me just this once again." It turned out the love I thought was love wasn't love. The love I thought wasn't love had always been there, protecting me. The day Emily Stone and I got married, news came from prison that David Miller had committed suicide. And that day was Sarah Stone's release date. Outside the grand wedding venue, I saw the incredibly haggard Sarah Stone through the crowd. She had been abandoned by the Stone family. They had arranged for her to settle abroad, never to return to the country. After that, I never saw Sarah Stone again, and her name seemed to vanish, never mentioned by anyone. A year later, Emily Stone and I welcomed our little life. I named him Leo, meaning facing the sun, new life.